Which is better, the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 or the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2021? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Now, the Moto G Stylus 2022, as the name does imply, was recently launched in 2022, whereas the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2021 was launched about a year ago. So this phone is the successor to this phone. And I will say, 1 year really hasn't brought us too many differences between these two devices, and in some ways, the 2022 model is actually a downgrade from the 2021 model. Now, there are several things about the 2022 model of the phone that I do like over the 2021 model, so we'll be going over all of those various differences in this video today. Now, the first thing I want to discuss is the MSRP. Now, both phones do feature an MSRP of $299. However, there are always different promotions going on, so definitely take a look at the links in the video description to see the most up-to-date pricing for both devices. Also, in addition to that, these phones are both sold at the various carriers, so it's certainly possible that your favorite carrier might be running a really good deal on one or the other, or maybe even both. Now, both of these phones do feature 6.8-inch displays. They're also both IPS LCD displays. However, the first difference is that with the Moto G Stylus 2022, the display actually features a refresh rate of 90 Hz, up from 60 Hz with the Moto G Stylus 2021. So essentially, you're getting a faster refresh rate here, which gives you a little bit of a more smoother premium experience. It's really not a huge difference, and that one feature certainly is not a reason to upgrade from this phone to this phone. But of course, it's always nice to see at least some improvements when we can get them. Now beyond that, both phones feature 1080p displays. However, with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we do have a 20.5:9 display compared to a 20:9 display with the 2021 model. So the display is a little bit narrower and taller here with the 2022. Now that does have a slight influence on the PPI in the sense that with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we're getting a PPI of 396 compared to a PPI of 386 with the G Stylus 2021. Now, as far as screen-to-body ratio goes, it's essentially the same, but it is slightly better with the 2022 model at 84.6% compared to 84.8% with the G Stylus 2021. Now, another major difference that you've probably already noticed is the placement of the front-facing camera. Now, with both devices, the front-facing camera is in a hole punch configuration, which is something that I definitely prefer. However, for the 2022 model of the phone, it has been moved to the center versus being located in the left corner here on the Moto G Stylus 2021. Both of these cameras are 16 megapixels though, and to see photo and video samples from all the various cameras on these devices, I definitely recommend checking out my full review videos that I've done of them. Now in general, when looking at the front panels of both phones, things do look pretty similar here. However, you can kind of notice that the G Stylus 2022 is a bit taller and narrower, which especially comes in handy for web browsing and browsing social media, for example, because you'll be able to fit more of your feed into a single frame. But on the other hand, with the G Stylus 2021 having a 20:9 display, the same concept essentially applies here too. Now, both of these devices do feature 128 gigabytes of internal storage, which is really good. I like that we have that much internal storage because apps continue to get bigger and bigger, and more people tend to download video, and take a bunch of photos as well. And it's always nice to have the most onboard storage that you can get. And then by having micro SD card expansion with both of these devices, you can always offload photos and videos, for example. Now there is no wireless charging with either phone, but they do both feature fingerprint sensors on the power button. So we'll give it a try here first with the Moto G Stylus 2022. Nice and fast and responsive. One more time. Very good. And we'll give it a try here with the Moto G Stylus 2021. Also very quick. As good, if not better. So they both have really good responsive fingerprint sensors, which is a really good thing. And I also like having the fingerprint sensor located on the power button with both of these phones because that placement does make it pretty convenient. Now both devices also support Face Unlock, so it is nice that we do have multiple methods for getting into the phones. Now, as far as the camera modules go with these devices, with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we have a triple camera setup compared to a quad camera setup with the Moto G Stylus 2021. However, despite this, they actually both have the same functionalities. Apparently, with the Moto G Stylus 2022, the ultra wide angle camera is kind of unique in the sense that it also gives us the macro functionality. Now, I have no idea how that works, but Motorola does mention that on their website. So essentially they've combined the ultra wide and macro cameras into one. And then we're also getting a depth sensing camera at 2 megapixels, which both phones have. And even though we have that additional functionality with the ultra wide doubling as the macro camera, both ultra wide cameras on these devices are 8 megapixels. And then when it comes to the main camera, with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we have a 50 megapixel main camera compared to a 48 megapixel main camera with the G Stylus 2021. Now here's the camera apps on both devices, and we do have the main camera pulled up for both of them right now. And essentially the interfaces are pretty similar in the sense that we have just the standard camera. We can then move over to switch over to the ultra wide angle camera, and then we can easily toggle over to the macro cameras as well. We can also head over to the menu for more options, and you can see here are the various features and abilities available. So it looks like we are gaining several of them with the G Stylus 2022. For example, we're gaining dual capture for the photo mode, whereas with the G Stylus 2021, we don't have that. And then there's also a dedicated mode here to take ultra res 50 megapixel photos. So actually by default, the Moto G Stylus's main camera doesn't actually take photos at the full 50 megapixels, but you can go into the setting and do that if you want to. Now keep in mind though that if you do take photos at 50 megapixels, it will use up the space on your phone quite a bit faster. And then you can see under video, we still have the same options for both devices. Now speaking of that, there are some limitations when it comes to video recording with the Moto G Stylus 2022 compared to its 2021 counterpart. And that is that with the Moto G Stylus 2022, video recording is limited at 1080p, whereas with the 2021 model, we can take 4K video. And then with the front cameras on both, it is limited at 1080p. So it certainly is a bit disappointing to see this phone drop 4K video support, as far as at least recording it. It can at least take video at 60 FPS at 1080p, but I would have preferred to see it have 4K video recording, essentially since all the TVs in my house are 4K, and I'm sure it's the same exact way for most people watching. So if you want to record family memories, for example, honestly, you'd probably want to record those in the best resolution possible, so that when you look back on those memories later on, whether it's a decade or two from now, you can at least watch it at 4K. It's not really a deal breaker on the other hand, but again, I really wish that the Moto G Stylus 2022 did indeed have 4K video recording. And I almost forgot to show you how things look on the front-facing cameras on both devices, but here we go right there. And then we can also enable portrait mode here to get those nice blurred out backgrounds. Now, as far as processor and RAM go, there actually are some pretty big changes here. So with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we are now getting more RAM, going from 4 gigabytes of RAM to 6 gigabytes of RAM, which is really good. But the processor is also different. So with the G Stylus 2021, as you might know, we got the Qualcomm Snapdragon 678, whereas with the G Stylus 2022, we have the MediaTek Helio G88 processor. Now in general, MediaTek has come a long way, and they have many really good processors, including the processor in this phone. However, for my testing, it appears that this processor in this device is actually not as powerful as what we're getting here with the Moto G Stylus 2021. And the benchmark test results are actually quite different going from this phone to this phone. So I'll let the numbers speak for themselves, but you can see for the single core score, we went from 538 to 369. So that's quite a bit of a decrease here. And the multi-core score decreased as well. Now the good news though is that both phones, especially this phone, but the G Stylus 2022 is still usable. So it's still a decent mid-range device and probably will work totally fine for most people out there. But on the other hand, it is disappointing to see a significantly slower processor with this phone compared to its predecessor. Now, one improvement from this phone to this phone is the battery capacity. So with the Moto G Stylus 2021, we got a 4,000 milliamp hour internal battery. And now with the G Stylus 2022, it has been upgraded to a 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery. So definitely expect to get very good battery life out of this device since the battery is so large. Now, as far as software goes, at the moment, both of these phones are running Android 11. The Moto G Stylus 2021 originally came with Android 10 and has since gotten the update to Android 11. And then the G Stylus 2022 came with Android 11 already. Now, what's unfortunate is that Android 12 has been out for a decent amount of time at this point, and typically, Motorola only gives their G series devices one major software update. So I'm sure this phone will be getting Android 12, but that's probably the last update that it's going to get. So it's a bit disappointing when the phone is already behind when it's being launched, and essentially getting the software update just brings it up to date. But it's very likely that by the time this phone gets Android 12, we'll probably be already at Android 13. So it is a bit unfortunate, definitely a little bit frustrating there, but that's the typical thing that Motorola has been doing for the last several years, and I suppose that they don't really see much of a problem with it. So if you don't really care about major Android updates, then don't worry about it. But if you are someone who does look forward to the various innovations and new features that come out with every new version of Android, then I can definitely see that you'd be disappointed if you end up getting really either of these phones for that matter. The good news though is that the actual software itself is really good. So Motorola always does a really good job giving us a nice, clean version of Android. They have added in their various bonus features, but pretty much all those features are good features to have. So in general, I like the software situation that we have as far as the way it is, but I definitely would prefer them to be a lot better when it comes to updates. Now, another downside with both of these phones, which I feel like in 2022, at least for me, is a deal breaker, but again, in the budget segment, it's not too common, unfortunately, that is the lack of NFC. So there's no NFC with either of these two devices, which is the technology that's used for mobile contactless payments. So I do that all the time, or at least with the phones that I'm using that have that feature. And when I use a phone that doesn't have NFC, it's certainly a bit of a disappointment and a step back. Another thing to keep in mind here too is that with the Moto G Stylus 2022, it only supports 4G LTE. So there is no 5G compatibility with this device. Now there's also no 5G compatibility with the Moto G Stylus 2021 either, but in between this phone and this phone, we did get the Moto G Stylus 5G, which was launched last fall. So that's a great phone in general, and I'm sure we'll be getting another Moto G Stylus 5G in 2022 as well, but I'm surprised that this phone just doesn't have 5G. I figured that 2021 would be the final year where we got one LTE model of the Stylus, and then a 5G model of it as well, but it appears that they're continuing that trend now into 2022. Hopefully in 2023, we won't be getting any more LTE-only phones because 5G is the future. Now taking a closer look at the hardware, both phones are made completely out of plastic besides the displays being glass. So I would say quality-wise, they're essentially the same. Taking a look at the left side of both phones, we just have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the right side of both phones, we have volume up, volume down, and then we also have the power button, which is also the fingerprint sensor. Then up top here, both phones have noise canceling microphones. And then on the bottom of the two phones, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, we have the USB-C port for charging and data transfer, microphone, speaker, and we have the stylus, which I'll talk about more in a second here. And then taking a look at the back of both phones, they both have glossy backs. I think they both look nice. The G Stylus 2022 is also offered in pink as well, so if you prefer that, you can do that instead. But I think both do look good. They do both pick up a lot of fingerprints, but that is something that does come with having a glossy back on pretty much any phone. So in general, I think both phones do have a nice design. Now we did get a slight improvement when it comes to the stylus with the G Stylus 2020, in the sense that the stylus can go into the phone any way you want it to. So the stylus is completely round in that sense, so that's good. Whereas with the G Stylus 2021, you can actually only put the stylus in the phone a certain way because you can see at the end of the stylus, it's not perfectly round. So is that a problem? Honestly, not really. But on the other hand, I do like the fact that the stylus is at least a little bit easier to put into the G Stylus 2022. Beyond that though, the styluses are pretty similar. The Moto G Stylus 2022 does have a slightly larger stylus, but essentially they're very similar in general. And from my experience of using the styluses on both devices, things do also seem to be very similar here too. So we really didn't gain too many additional software features, if any at all, related to that. But that's not really a big deal because typically with the Moto G Stylus line of devices, you kind of expect a very basic stylus experience, unlike Samsung's previous Note devices and the new S22 Ultra, where they have some of the top of the line styluses. These phones are essentially starter phones if maybe you're not so sure you want a phone with a stylus, but you still want to try it out. So the styluses are good for navigating around the devices, doing some drawing, also writing down notes. But in general, they're not extremely precise, so I certainly wouldn't get either of these phones to do professional drawings, for example. So in conclusion, Motorola really isn't bringing too much new or different to the table with the Moto G Stylus 2022, and in some ways it is a downgrade from the Moto G Stylus 2021. Probably the biggest downgrades are that there's no 4K video recording and that the processor is decently slower. However, in the camera department, the quality is a bit better, and I also feel like the display does get a bit brighter with the Moto G Stylus 2022 compared to its 2021 counterpart. However, again, in the ways that really matter, at least to me, such as processor power, it is a downgrade, so it is disappointing. That being said though, in many ways, this phone is just a continuation of what was working already very well for Motorola with their Moto G Stylus series. And with all that said, I am looking forward to the Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 coming out sometime this year. I feel like that phone is essentially going to be a Moto G Stylus 2022, but even better. But in conclusion, I hope you enjoyed this video between these two devices. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Also sub to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. But this is Kevin here, coming at you with Moto G Stylus 2022 versus Moto G Stylus 2021. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a great rest of your day.